Two program requirements have been selected for Part 2 of the 2020-2021 Random Validation Process for the Title I Part A program. Requirement number 1 is a school-wide program Campus Comprehensive Needs Assessment, and requirement number 2 is the Campus Written Parent and Family Engagement Policy. Each LEA selected to participate in Part 2 of the Random Validation Process for the Title I Part A program was provided with the name of one school-wide program campus. The LEA will be responsible for submitting the documentation requested for only that one school-wide program campus for both of the requirements noted here. We will now take a look at each of the requirements in detail. The first program requirement being validated is a school-wide program campus comprehensive needs assessment. The Every Student Succeeds Act, also referred to as ESSA, states that the Title I Part A school-wide program is based on a comprehensive needs assessment of the entire school that takes into account information on the academic achievement of children in relation to the challenging state academic standards, particularly the needs of those children who are failing or at risk of failing to meet the challenging state academic standards and any other factors as determined by the local education agency. The LEA will need to submit 2 items of documentation related to this requirement. The documentation required for item 1.1 is a description of the campus's comprehensive needs assessment process. The LEA will need to submit the relevant page or pages of the comprehensive needs assessment or campus improvement plan that includes the description of the current school year's campus's comprehensive needs assessment process. The following items should be included in the comprehensive needs assessment description: CNA dates, stakeholders, areas examined, and data sources analyzed. Let's now take a look at the specific information for each of these items. CNA dates refers to the dates that the CNA was developed, if it's a new campus, or the date or dates that the CNA was reviewed and revised for the 2020-2021 school year. Stakeholders refers to a list of stakeholders involved that includes the individuals by name and their roles. Please note that parents may not be LEA employees in order to fill the parent roles on the committee. Areas examined refers to a list of areas examined in the CNA process. For example, curriculum instruction, demographics, technology, parent, family, and community engagement, school culture, etc. Data sources analyzed refers to a list of the multiple data sources that were analyzed as part of the CNA process. For example, academic achievement, prior year program evaluations, student attendance, student discipline, college and career readiness, etc. In summary, the description that is to be submitted to satisfy item number 1.1 of the CNA process program requirement should include the CNA dates, stakeholders that participated in the process, the areas that were examined, and the multiple data sources analyzed. The documentation required for item 1.2 includes meeting agendas, meeting notes or minutes, and participant rosters documenting the campus's CNA process. There are several documentation requirements that the LEA should be aware of. It is highly unlikely that a CNA process would take place in one meeting, considering that the process should be comprehensive in nature. Therefore, an LEA should share documentation from multiple meetings to establish compliance, which we would define as at least 2. The documentation submitted should provide evidence that the CNA process described in the CNA description referenced in item 1.1 was followed. The standard meeting documentation that an LEA should maintain locally includes meeting agendas, meeting notes or minutes, and sign-in sheets. Please note that due to COVID-19, documentation for virtual meetings is an acceptable form of documentation. Given the increased use of virtual meeting environments during the 2019-2020 and 2020-2021 school years, participant rosters that include the meeting title, meeting date, and stakeholder names and roles would be acceptable substitutes for the more traditional sign-in sheets. This eliminates the need of a participant signature. Please refer to the table referenced on this slide to determine what is required on meeting documentation and what is considered best practice. Meeting agendas should include the meeting title, campus name, date, and time. It is a best practice to include the location of the meeting. Meeting notes or minutes should include the meeting title, campus name, date, and time. It is best practice to include the location of the meeting, stakeholder names of those involved in the process, and stakeholder roles. The participant roster should include the meeting title, campus name, date, time, stakeholder names of those in attendance, and stakeholder roles. It is best practice to include the location of the meeting. Please note that parents may not be LEA employees in order to fill the parent roles on the committee. We will now look at requirements associated with program requirement number 2. The second program requirement being validated is the campus written parent and family engagement policy. The Every Student Succeeds Act, also referred to as ESSA, states that each school served under Title I Part A shall jointly develop with and distribute to parents and family members of participating children a written parent and family engagement policy agreed on by such parents that shall describe the means for carrying out the requirements of subsections C through F. Parents shall be notified of the policy in an understandable and uniform format, and to the extent practicable, provided in a language that parents can understand. The LEA will need to submit 2 items of documentation related to this requirement. The documentation required for item 2.1 is the campus written parent and family engagement policy. The LEA will need to submit the relevant pages of the current school year campus written parent and family engagement policy that references the description of the methods of policy distribution and the languages in which the policy was distributed to parents and family members of participating students. Please do not submit the campus written PFE policy in its entirety. Only submit the relevant pages that are referenced here in the acceptable documentation. The documentation required for item 2.2 is evidence of policy distribution to parents and family members of participating students. The LEA will need to submit the relevant page or pages of the evidence of policy distribution to parents and family members of participating students. The LEA must submit current school year documentation for only one method as identified in the policy utilized to distribute the campus written PFE policy to parents and family members of participating students. Here are some examples of acceptable documentation for various methods of policy distribution. Again, this is a friendly reminder that the LEA should submit current school year documentation for only one method. Examples include student handbook. If the student handbook is a method that the campus used to distribute the policy, the LEA can submit the relevant pages of the student handbook that include the campus written PFE policy. If the campus website is the method that the campus used to distribute the policy, the LEA can submit a printout of the campus website where the most current policy is posted and the link to access the document. If direct mail is a method that the campus used to distribute their policy, the LEA can submit a copy of the letter accompanying the policy distributed to parents via direct mail, or the documentation that is required to be maintained as per local policies and procedures. If email is the method that the campus used to distribute their policy, the LEA can submit a copy of the email that was sent out that includes the email header, which would include the to, from, CC, subject, and attachments, or the documentation that is required to be maintained as per local policies and procedures. If newspaper publication is the method that the campus used to distribute the policy, the LEA can submit a newspaper clipping or printout referencing the policy being published in a newspaper. If distribution of any of these events is the method that the campus used to distribute the policy, the LEA can submit documentation that is required to be maintained as per local policies and procedures. This concludes the presentation. If you have any questions, please contact us via telephone at 512-463-9499 or via email at essasupport@tea.texas.gov.